Okay, now we are going to do the tier list where we are going to rank every single Premier League manager into 5 different categories with Jonathan and Nasty. Our 5 categories: elite, which is the best of the best; really good; decent, which would be about mid-table; bad; and then bluffer. So, lads, we are going to start with Mikel Arteta, and we're going to try and get you to work together to see what category they go in. And if we can't decide, I will have the final say. Perfect. Or at least I'll do my best to keep my bias out of it. Okay, so Mikel Arteta. Jonathan, what are we saying? Where does he rank?
I don't think he can be elite yet. Maybe if he wins a Premier League title, he could be elite. But even so, even if he won one, I'm not sure he could be up there with Pep and Klopp. I think there's only 2 elite managers in the Premier League. So I think you'd have to put him in the second tier, which is what? Very good, is it?
Really good.
Really good.
What do we think, Nasty?
I'd completely agree. Definitely, I think he's turned around Arsenal, really. I mean, from when he came in there, obviously he had a couple of dodgy seasons, but he's completely turned it around. I personally think the same could have happened with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I would have liked to see him follow a similar path. They were there for a while. But he's done excellent work. Yeah. But again, he hasn't really won anything to merit being in that elite class. So.
I think he'll be future elite, actually. Yeah. I do, yeah.
Really good. Yeah. He's really well placed there.
Yeah. Okay, so going into the second tier, really good. Let's move on to Unai Emery. He's my boy. I wanted to be the next Liverpool manager, but he just signed a contract extension with Aston Villa. Where are you putting him, Jonathan?
It's difficult. I think there's 2 categories you think really good or decent. I think it's difficult between the 2. He's done a lot of good work in different countries. I think bar the Arsenal job, he wasn't great at PSG, but bar the Arsenal job, he's been pretty good. I'd be thinking about decent, but I don't know. Does he get into that really good tier?
It's either upper in decent or like just about into really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, I would say the Arsenal job puts a lot of people off putting him into really good. But the work he's done at Villa, I mean, it's tremendous, and you're basing it off right now.
Let's base it off the Villa job, because when he came in and took over from Gerrard,
he's manager of the season this season.
Yeah,
undoubtedly. Even if Villa finish 5th,
if they get Champions League, he's manager of the season.
Yeah, I think he's not as good as Arteta, but I think he has to be in the really good tier. Thinking about it, again.
I think he slips into it.
Okay, right, he's going into really good too. Let's go to Iraola. Nasty, what are you saying?
I would say decent. I do think he's a very good manager who has Bournemouth playing a good brand of football. But, after putting Emery into really good, I don't think he can quite make it there. But he's well placed at decent, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually quite like Iraola from watching Bournemouth a handful of times this season, especially that United game.
Don't mention the wall.
They play good football. They have some nice, tricky wingers there. They're quite. They play a lot on the counter attack. They press well. I think he's a good manager. He is Bournemouth, definitely going in the right direction. Decent.
All right, 100%. Decent for Iraola. Let's move on to Thomas Frank, Jonathan.
I like Thomas Frank a lot. He's been linked with the Liverpool job, but I don't think he's that yet. But I think there's big things on the horizon for him. 100%. He's not quite really good, but I think he has to be decent.
Yeah, I'd put him decent as well. I mean, Brentford have been brutal at times this season. They've turned significantly better, but over the past couple of seasons, if you're basing him off that, he's done a really good job overall. So I'd agree. I'd put him in decent.
Yeah. The next manager, I think, is one of those managers where if we're having this conversation at this time last season, he will be a lot higher than he is now. But Nasty, De Zerbi. What are we making of De Zerbi this season?
Yeah, I mean, after Brighton's season last season, people are holding him to the same benchmark, but hasn't been as good. I do think he is still a really good manager. I would put him in there, just about. Same with Emery. I think he just squeezes into it. But I mean, there's definitely an argument there to put him into decent. He's dropped. Brighton as a whole have kind of dropped off significantly, so they're not the force that they were last season, but I think I would just about put him into really good.
Okay, what are you saying, Jonathan?
Yeah, he's on the precipice of kind of both. But no, really good. I'd agree. I mean, I said yesterday that I'd actually quite like to see De Zerbi as Liverpool manager. I think he has a good brand. He's a good style of play. He has a good eye for talent. Look at Brighton last season, and they were absolutely superb. They were playing some of the best football in the league. I think people need to cut him some slack this season because he lost 2 of his very best players last summer. Tactically, yes, at times this season he has been found out, but you know, when you lose 2 of your best players, you take Salah and Van Dijk out of Liverpool, or Alisson and Van Dijk out of Liverpool. We'd be a very different team. I think De Zerbi's really good. I think he's going to be a top manager. Really good. Yeah.
Okay, De Zerbi joins Arteta and Unai in the second tier. Moving on to Vincent Kompany, Jonathan.
Last season I would have said decent, but I think he's got to be bad. I'm not sure if he's quite bluffer, but wow, Burnley have been pretty pathetic this season, and it doesn't say much about the Championship when they were Centurions last season. I'm between bad and bluffer.
What does it say about a manager? Kind of the same with Ange as well, where you got to admire them in one spot for sticking to their brand of football, but then when it's not working, it's like, well, do you not have the acumen to change it?
Yeah, fact.
What do you think, Nasty?
Yeah, I wouldn't quite put him in bluffer, but I would put him bad. You know, obviously after seeing Burnley in the Championship last season, I expected them to be stalwarts in the league this season, hold their own, maybe mid-table. But yeah, I've been shocked at how bad they've been. And obviously you have to put a lot of the onus on Kompany for that. Yeah. So I would put him bad, not quite bluffer.
And I agree, and I think that's a good point, Graham. He doesn't have a plan B. Yeah, it's clear.
I was shocked that they actually can still survive. I thought they were dead and buried, but they're still. I think they're 4 points. If they win midweek, they could. But that's a big
they've came back a little bit. But ultimately, really, really poor.
He had a bad night last night at the Emirates. Pochettino nasty.
Bluffer.
What do we think? Oh, really?
Bluffer. Yeah, I mean, I'm basing it off right now. You know, ask me when he's in the Spurs job, and he's obviously significantly higher, but Jesus, there's no defending what he's doing with that Chelsea side. I'm not saying he's working with much, but he spent a lot of money. And just seeing them without Palmer last night, I think, like you say there, with Burnley having no plan B, I think they've no plan B without Palmer. No plan B without penalties. I can't put him any higher than bluffer, personally.
I think he deserves bad. He was good at Southampton. He was good at Spurs. He was awful at PSG, and he is awful now at Chelsea. I think with limited resources, he's actually okay.
He's got too much money.
Yeah, it's a bit of a David Moyes. It's a bit of a David Moyes situation. You know, Everton, West Ham, good. Not great with West Ham now, but I mean, he's won a European trophy with them. And then he goes to United, obviously taking over Fergie, which really is a poison chalice, taking over somebody like Alex Ferguson. And he had so much available to him. You know, he spends loads of money on somebody like Marouane Fellaini. I think he's one of those. I think he deserves bad, not quite bluffer, just because he was good at Southampton and he was good at Spurs.
You're sticking with bluffer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basing them off right now. It would be like if you asked me Anthony Martial. If you're basing it off the season he came into United, he'd be higher, but now he'd be an outright bluffer. So that's kind of the standard I'm holding to Pochettino here.
The first one I got to choose, I'm going to put him in bad just because Chelsea is such a basket case at the minute. And I don't know, you say he spends a lot of money, but how many of them are his signings? So for me, Poch goes into the bad category. Jonathan, I'm going to ask you about this man because I know he broke your heart a few weeks ago when you were at Anfield. Crystal Palace's Glasner. He's only been there for couple of games, couple of months.
Yeah.
How do you think he's been doing?
Palace were really impressive at Anfield. Really impressive. I mean, they could have scored 3 goals in that first half against us. And then at the weekend, just watching some of the game against West Ham. I mean, West Ham aren't very good at the moment, but to beat them 5-2. Henderson had a howler there at the end. Scored 5 goals against West Ham. Very, very impressive. He's definitely got Palace playing in the right manner. He's got them in the right direction. As I said, they were impressive at Anfield. I think he deserves decent and maybe higher up in the future.
Yeah, I mean, watching that Liverpool game, even the build up to that goal, it was amazing. And it's something you don't really associate Palace with playing this beautiful style of football. But they were really good, and then obviously scoring 5 against West Ham with Jonathan, as Jonathan said, I completely agree with him. No denying that how impressive that is. But he's fairly new. We don't know too much about him yet. So I'd fit him in decent.
Yeah, it'll be good to see how he gets on with the summer and a full season. So moving on to Sean Dyche. What are we saying, Nasty?
I would say decent just about. He's on the border there between decent and bad, okay? And I do think this is for a very specific style of football. Deutsch ball. Nobody else can play it. It's Route 1. It's ugly, but it can work. And he's the king of getting out of relegation battles. I think bad would be harsh, just because of what he's done. The escapes that he's made, and I think he will keep Everton up, albeit the point deduction and stuff like that. But I'd edge him just in there at decent. I have a lot of respect for Deutsch.
I do quite like Dyche. He is funny. He's a proper character. I was going to say I think he deserves bad, just ultimately because Everton are a big football club. They should be performing and doing a lot better than what they are. When he originally came in, it looked like he would have Everton, well, not so much in relegation battles, but Everton again this season. Granted, they have been deducted points, but they've been really, really poor. Some absolutely embarrassing results there, especially to lose to Chelsea 6-0. But I was going to put him in bad, but then I just remembered it will probably come back to bite me tonight, so I'm going to say decent.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as I said, for a certain style of football, it's horrible to watch. And if I was an Everton fan, you know, it would be brutal watching that week in, week out. But it can work. It does work sometimes. And I think as well, obviously Everton are a big club, I agree with you, and they should be held to a higher standard. But, you know, before he came in, they were brutal. Two manager reigns before that. So when Rafa was managing them, and also Lampard, obviously. So I think he's had to clean up a lot of that mess as well.
And without the points deduction, they would be 14th.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Not too bad. Moving on to Marco Silva. What do you reckon, Nasty?
It's a tough one. I would say decent. This season, I would say Fulham have overachieved 100%. But I'm just remembering that Everton reign, which wasn't great as well, which I can't put him into really good, obviously. But I would say the lower half of decent, I will put him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I actually quite like Marco Silva. We've had some great games against Fulham this season. Fulham have been really impressive. Wherever he goes, his sides play good ball. He's good tactically. He makes good signings. I think he's a good manager. Yeah, so I think decent is fair.
We're about halfway through the tier list ranking the Premier League managers. So far, nobody in the elite. In the second tier, we got Arteta, Unai Emery, and De Zerbi. 3 in decent, we got Iriola, Glasner, Thomas Frank, Dyche, and Marco Silva. And so far, bad is Company and Poch. No bluffers just yet, but I'm feeling we might have a few coming.
Had a show for one.
Moving on to Jurgen Klopp. Jonathan.
One word, elite.
Yeah, I'd have to put him elite as well. I agree with what Jonathan said at the start. There's only 2 in the league that I would class as elite, so I would put Klopp in there. Not even purely tactically. I just think mentality-wise, an argument you made about Southgate changing the environment, he's so good at that. Look over the years at those Liverpool sides, they've been so based off, you know, positive influence and just a good mentality as a fundamental before you even think about tactically. So yeah, he has to be elite.
Yeah, fact.
Rob Edwards?
Listen, he's not dealing with much, but they haven't been great. I would say bluffer, but I would put him just about. I would say just about bad. But that's more so for Luton overall than him as a manager. But I'm going to put him bad.
I thought for a second you were going to actually put him bluffer.
No, I'm not going to put him bluffer. Just about.
I genuinely.
You nearly fell off your chair, John.
No, genuinely, because I actually think, Nasty, as you touched on there, he has nothing available to him there at Luton. Luton have been fantastic this season, and even though they will probably go down, they have fought like dogs. He has his team clearly with the right mentality. They go out and they play for him. Something like United with Ten Hag, you don't see that. Rob Edwards, he's class with the media. He's a person I really, really hold in a high regard. I have a lot of respect for him. He's good in winning and losing. He doesn't cry about it. I think he's done a great job with Luton. I think he deserves decent, genuinely. I think he is one of those managers who's going to be managing an upper Premier League club in years to come.
Yeah, they were a tenacious side. I just think I would need more proof. If you put him at another team, I'm not sure he'd be able to replicate. That he's not dealing with a lot, and if your main trait as a team is tenacity, I'm not sure that it's really a good base for him managing any other team. But yeah, I can agree to put him at decent.
I just think quickly, in terms of if you look at that team, if you look at, say, the overall value of that team, they shouldn't be anywhere near the Premier League. They shouldn't be anywhere near the Premier League, and they shouldn't be anywhere near being out of the relegation zone.
Yeah.
They should be bottom by paper. On paper, they should be bottom by a distance. They should be the Sheffield United. But they've been really good. Mad respect
the
for
fact
Luton
they've
and
got there in the
Edwards.
first place, I suppose.
Yeah.
It is a bit brash from me.
Well, I thought you were going to say bluffer, and I was like,
I'll,
nasty.
I'll recollect. I'll stick at decent.
Fair.
I agree.
We'll fly through some of the next few managers. Pep, where are we putting them?
Elite.
Simple
Number
as.
1.
Eric Ten Hag. Jonathan, where are you putting him?
Bad.
And Nasty?
I think he's
I'm
got
going to say decent. I think his first season was really good. I don't think he should have finished third, to be honest. I think that he should have finished a lot lower. So to finish third, get a Carabao Cup, I thought it was quite good. This season has been dire, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's all down to him. Look at what he did at Ajax as well. I think bad is harsh, but I can understand it based off recency. But I'd put him decent.
I think he was good at Ajax, obviously, but look, we're talking about Arnie Slot there a couple of minutes ago, and please God, touch wood, if he comes to Liverpool, that it's not the same thing that happens. But you can look good in the Eredivisie, but he's ultimately came to the Premier League and he's been really, really found out tactically, and with his transfers, he nearly ticks every box of what a Premier League manager shouldn't do. I think he's got to be bad.
I'm trying to leave my bias at the door, but unfortunately I got to agree with Jonathan. I just think he's got no
Three-
chance.
I'm always sorry.
I'm sorry. Eddie Howe, what are we thinking, Jonathan?
Decent, straight up decent. Ultimately, for Newcastle to take that next step, I don't think he's that man, but decent. Did a great job with Bournemouth, and he's doing a good job with Newcastle.
Agree, Nasty?
If you asked me last season, I probably would have put him just about really good. But I think, again, they have not been up to the same standard as last season. Still been good, though. I'd put him in decent.
Okay. Nuno at Forest. Now, talk about basket case of a club after what happened over the weekend with that statement. What do we think? How's he doing at Forest, Nasty?
Bad. And I think firmly in bad. I don't think quite bluffer. But I think he was really poor with Spurs. And, I don't even think the argument is there for him not dealing with much, because they've spent a lot of money in that relegation battle. So I think you can take that out of the equation. But I think he fits well in bad there. Hasn't been up to scratch.
Agree?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Another person who is rock bottom, Chris Wilder.
I think it'd be actually harsh to put him in bluffer because he did have that Sheffield United team really cooking years ago. I mean, they finished like 8th. I remember Liverpool's 2 games against them was really difficult, and Sheffield United were a force that season. He's had to pick up the pieces when Sheffield United have been terrible all season. It's not his fault. I think bad. I wouldn't go any further.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it would be too harsh putting him in bluffer. If we're talking about someone not dealing with much, he's dealing with absolutely nothing. I just don't see how you could put the onus on him to put him into bluffer. But it was a recipe for disaster to begin with. Them reverting back to him, probably based on what he did before he was sacked. But yeah, I mean, you can't put him any higher either at the same time.
3 left, and this one has been well discussed over the season. Ange Postecoglou, Jonathan.
He's got to be decent at the moment, no higher. Obviously had a wonderful start with Spurs. I think he has been exposed a little bit, more than a little bit, kind of since the turn of the year or around Christmas or whatever. But no, there's good signs there. But I don't think he can be any higher than decent. He's not fully proven himself yet.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. If you look at the trajectory, they're not gonna get top 4 more than likely. So I don't think you can put him into really good. But obviously he's done well with Celtic, done well outside of Europe as well. He's held in a high regard. and I think he has Spurs playing a very positive brand of football. So I think he's like upper decent there. I would put him.
Yeah.
It looks like his days are numbered at West Ham, but David Moyes nasty.
Decent, I would say. He's done a great job there overall at West Ham.
I think he's been underrated by
yeah.
the fans. I think he's getting a very hard time
Doesn't
by the
deserve
fans.
all the stick.
No.
Even looking back to the United job, I never called for him to go. A similar argument, I think, that it was way too early, especially after having such a long reign with Ferguson. But this past reign at West Ham, it's been really good, and anybody that says otherwise needs to give their head a wobble.
Yeah.
So I put him in decent.
Yeah, I agree. Good job at West Ham and Everton.
And
Decent, yeah.
finally, an up-and-comer, Gary O'Neill.
I like Gary O'Neill. I think he's done a really good job he's done a really good job at Bournemouth, and he's done a really good job now at Wolves. They have some really nice players there. He's brought a couple of nice players in. I think decent is fair, but I'm just realising we haven't put anybody in Bluffer. I think we should throw Company in Bluffer.
Someone has to make
Like, we have to sacrifice somebody.
I
Yeah,
thought you were
exactly.
going to put Ten Hag personally. Gary O'Neill, I really like Gary O'Neill. And I'm making an argument in my head here for really good, but I think I will just put him decent. I think if you look at what happened to him there at Bournemouth and to bounce back and do what he's doing at Wolves, it deserves a tremendous amount of respect. So I think he's done a great job, but yeah, we'll put him decent.
Yeah.
Right, so there we go. Let's go through them. Elite, Klopp and Pep. Really good. We got Arteta, Unai Emery and De Zerbi. Then we got a wrath of managers in decent. Iriola, Thomas Frank, Glasner, Dyche, Marco Silva, Rob Edwards, Howe, Ange, David Moyes and Gary O'Neill. In the bad, Poch, Eric Ten Hag, Nuno and Wilder. And then late substitution into the bluffer from Jonathan Morley, Vincent Company.
Couldn't leave it empty.
We have to have one.
There's definitely some disparity there in the decent category when you look at it, but you know, I think we've got a fairly already.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Give the page a subscribe as well, and you can check out the full podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And also give the lads a follow at Jonathan Morley LFC on TikTok and Jonathan Morley 97 on Instagram and nasty_2K across all social media platforms.